Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another matchup between the Shambler and Mystery Meat. And Mystery Meat is once again providing the information of what his random race was. So, Shambler will be Zerg. I assume that means he's not random. And this is Nitro Valley, a 4-player map by Knight of the Realm. Actually, it's the only 4-player map we currently have in the competitive pool. Although the competitive pool will be updated. I think, for example, Otherworld seems to have passed the test. That's a map that I made. And I think Nightfall as well by Veek. So those can at least be eligible for, the not currently in the active duty pool or whatever. But active duty is a term I'm borrowing from Counter-Strike, by the way. But whether or not it's going to be in the tournament pool, I'm not sure. But at the very least, it doesn't need to be put into non-standard, I would say. And we'll see about others. I know that Starlight Station and Roadside Ramshackle are going to be featured in some of the future casts, so stay tuned for that. But in this particular game, we have 2 games. We have both of them on Nitro Valley, so we'll see how that one goes. And maybe we can talk about its eligibility or its continued, ability to provide good games. It's going to be a gateway first from Mystery Meets Protoss, and it will be a Hydrock Den coming first for Shambler. So we'll see how that one works out once he ends up finding this area. The thing about Protoss units in Cosmonarchy Brood War is you really want to take this as a... You want this to be like a situation where you constantly go for like kiting and chunk fights. You want to fight in chunks. And that's because of flash shielding, which is helpfully demonstrated by this pylon taking some damage as the Droleth heckles the workers. So the hull damage obviously doesn't regenerate, and Protoss have no way of immediately replenishing that. But after 2 seconds, they regenerate their shields pretty fast. And actually, I think Mystery Meat was... Oh, he was just about to lose his worker, but Shambler thinks twice about it. Zerg units, on the other hand, regenerate twice as fast while burrowed, and I think they regenerate more than twice as fast just by default. But they have to be out of combat for 2 seconds, similar to the Scribe shields, the Protoss shields in general. And something like a Drakodin obviously has a really big advantage here over conventional units because it's ranged. So it's not like a Zealot, which is constantly going to be taking damage. The Drakodin, our name for the Dragoon, is in a situation where you can look at it and say, oh, well, you can take fights, you can fall back and regenerate the shields. And that's reflected in the shield counts as well. Like the Scribe only has 15 shields, so you don't need that much to deal some damage to it, some hull damage. But the Drakodin, on the other hand, has 40 shields, which is not that much. But when you look at it, oh, he actually found it. So in CMBW, well, maybe he didn't find it. When you're standing over burrowed units, they are revealed, which is very important when fighting Lakizolisks, our name for the Lurker, but that's not going to be featured at least right now, as we do indeed have a Larvosk Cesiant. This is a production cell similar to the Hatcherosk, but you mutate it from the Kagrant, which is our name for the Creep Colony, the Kagrant Cesiant. Now, as we get further in to this matchup, we're going to see what Mystery Meat wants to go for. If you haven't figured out already, especially by the thumbnail being orange, the text being orange, I'm going to use this opportunity to educate new people, really call out to new people and say, hey, if you're new to the project or you want more kind of beginner-friendly information, this is where you go. I do some of these casts every now and then, and usually it's because I'm casting lower-level games and want to provide some sort of feedback. In this particular case, these are 2 of our best players, and they are regularly in the Grand Finals. In fact, they've been in the Grand Finals for all 3 of the tournaments that we've run for this game. And as a result, so far, it's Mystery Meat 2-1 in those tournament series. You can imagine this is a bit of a grudge match as they are emerging as fairly established players. I think Nablime could very easily get to that point himself, actually. So just as Shambler is looking to expand, we see a cheeky little pylon move. And so obviously the Hydras are going to be dealing with that. Now the cliff advantage here is displayed. You get +2 range on low ground targets. And that is indeed going to allow the Scribe to be destroyed. But as the Skithracore comes out, which is a ranged unit you get from the Hydrock Den, you get access to from the Hydrock Den, it's going to go ahead and mostly be used for scouting. It can tickle and harass workers, but it doesn't deal a great amount of damage. So it might not even be able to get a single worker kill here. If he could find the low HP one, which is harvesting from that mineral field, then he might have been able to focus that one down. But we don't currently have support for always showing health bars. If we did, I imagine that kind of play would happen a little bit more frequently. The Automaton Register is going to be Mystery Meat's choice here. The Idol fires a slow-moving projectile similar to the Drakodin, but when it hits, it deals some splash damage. And all Protoss Splash is always ally safe, except for Psionic Storm, of course, which is one of the abilities casted by the Cantavis, our name for the High Templar. So now, coming in here, he should be able to at least finish the job. I say should, but one more shot would have done it. He didn't want to risk it. That's a mistake I see happen often, where people will be using air units, and they're fairly vulnerable and gas expensive, but the Skithracore is actually quite durable for the early game, so I definitely could have killed that and then falled away and then regenerated its HP over time. But this does give the opportunity for both of our players to expand, so we're going to be settling into a bit more of a macro-oriented game. A second Kagrant is over here. I don't know if this is going to be yet another Larvosk, or if that is going to turn into some sort of defense. Obviously, Kagrants still do mutate into defensive structures in CMBW. You can see here people harvesting without capping their geysers. That's another common one. I don't even know if I need to mention that at this point because it's such a standard thing now. And yeah, slowly padding out the worker count. We actually have fairly even workers across both players. And they spawned on the same side of the map too, which means they can expand, you know, out towards the west, which is going to be interesting. What is Shambler up to? He's still heckling with this this Skithicore. It's not going to be fighting too much here. And I really like Mystery Meat's response. A lot of players would decide, oh my god, there's a Skithicore heckling me. Maybe there's going to be more coming. I'll build a lot of static defense. But that's a lot of money, and it's static. You cannot do anything with it. So I really like that he's just stationed a single Dracket in here. He's got idols, which move pretty fast. He's going to be able to maneuver around and try to catch that. And he's even sending a Scribe out, which is fortuitous scout timing because it's going to reveal the Hydras before they arrive at his front door. So Mystery Meat with some heads-up play. He can keep this Dracket in the mineral line to defend against the Skithicore if it comes to try to harass as these Hydras start to move forward. But either way, he's going to have a little bit of an interesting move here. I really like the pylon as well, obviously, in Brood War. You see this a lot in other matchups, too, where you kind of want to use this as a way to screw up the initial AI, where some of the units in the back are not going to be aggroed onto the units in the front, and they're going to attack the pylon instead. So, you know, they say screw up the AI. They're talking about the unit AI. They're the internal logic of how they handle certain units, certain orders. So instead of even bothering, Shambler is going to go ahead and fall back. I like that he tried to target the pylon as well. Is like saying, well, I'm going to see if I can kill this before we actually do a battle, because maybe that gives me a little bit more of an insight in. And yeah, we are seeing the embassy for the parallel worker queue. Embassy also provides you access to the Witness, which is our name for the Observer. It doesn't do upgrades anymore. We don't have upgrades in CMBW. And so I have a feeling that Shambler is going to notice this and say, all right, I'm going to need an Ovaleth, our name for the Overlord, which is now a detector and a transport. But we'll see if we spot that in the eggs at any point. I'm not sure if he noticed the shimmer or not. No, he's definitely seen it now, almost certainly, I feel like. But we'll see. We'll see what he does. Yeah, this is a second Larvosk back here, plus the second Hatrosk for his main, or his natural, rather. Is definitely going to give him some value here. We have some Cenotaphs being built at the edges of the Pylon Aura, which I still cannot see in replays, unfortunately. But eventually I will fix that. A second Witness is out as well for maximum map control and vision. And we even saw at least one Ecclesiast, which is kind of shrouded by the idol. The Ecclesiast is very powerful infantry for Protoss that regenerates shields for anybody near the victim of its attack. So it attacks like this Hydra. If there were Zealots around it, the Zealots would start regenerating shielding, including proccing flash shielding, which is obviously the most powerful part about it. So that's a pretty big deal, obviously. And we have some anti-drop circuits here. Obviously, these do not attack air. They are sunken colonies, but a different name, and obviously slightly different stats and such. We have a lot of Izira cores here to keep the money low. Shambler should be looking to expand to a third base at some point, but we shall see. And all of these Cenotaphs are out here. This is going to basically be Legionnaire spam. That's what the Ecclesiast was trained for as well, is to benefit those. So Legionnaires are a bit more on the less durable side than Zealots. They move faster, and when they tag a unit, other Legionnaires can teleport to that unit and start attacking. So they're very, very mobile. However, Shambler has gone for a very fast Iral Iris. This is a sub 10-minute Iral Iris. Usually around 10 minutes is when you would tech up under normal circumstances. Shambler has hard tunneled into gas expenditure so that he can, you know, just be a little bit more on the turtley side. He's going to send a couple of units out to scout around and confirm, you know, where the bases are at, that sort of thing. You know, we can actually see the order queue over here. We can see he's heading down to this area, and he will eventually arrive. His path terminates at that base. But he still has not spotted the Witnesses in his base. However, we'll see whether or not that really matters, because I don't think that Mystery Meat has spotted the Iral Iris. And when this is here, the Gorgle Swamp will be the option of choice, almost certainly, a mutation of the Hydroct that allows all of the units that are unlocked by the Hydroct, the Izira Core, the Skithicore, the Hydralisk, to mutate into more advanced strains. So we see that coming now. And that means that Bactylisks will be available. That is a Hydralisk mutation. You turn them into basically longer range units that are a little bit slower and fatter. By fatter, I of course mean more durable, but also fat. So they're hard to move around, similar to Dracodons, you could say. However, it's going to be effective specifically against Legionnaires, because Legionnaires are much more squishy than you would expect normally. And I think that's going to be a pretty big deal, because even though you can sustain them with the Ecclesiasts, you can't really guard against a lot of Bactylisks, but the Gorgle Swamp is not done yet, and the Bactylisks are not mutating yet. So when you're in a situation like that, yeah, this base is just going to probably get stepped on. The Skithicore is spotted out. thanks to the selection extender, Mystery Meat's able to select all of his units, but actually, in this case, he didn't need to pull back the top half of his army. He might have been wary about getting split. So this ends up getting, he's trying to burrow to avoid pain. That's not going to help. Obviously, the witness is what spotted that out to begin with, so he could have used that for detection even if he couldn't find it exactly. So he won't be able to get a free ride there. And if he had an Obeleth, Shambler could actually ferry a worker over here and then expand again, but he does not have one. That will not be the case. However, the Bactylisks are in a good position here and they're rotating over to start to take a little bit more of a aggressive path. And yeah, the Azira Corps did end up finding this base. It's guarded pretty well. The army is withdrawing from Mystery Meat. He thinks twice about poking his head in. I think he might have seen some of the Bactylisks or something with one of the witnesses. I'm not sure. I don't know why else he would do that. But a Muthrak Spire is on the way. So we could see Mutalisks. We could see Protathalors. We could see... What other units? Sycralisks, yes. The very unfortunate graphic for the Sycralisk. But don't worry, we're slowly replacing all of those units anyway. And a second automaton register for more idols, no rally point on that bottom one, but an ancestral archives. This is a very high tier structure coming out for Mystery Meat. It will give him access to powerful artillery in the form of the Uptekton, a very potent front line in the form of the Archon, which when it dies actually distributes shields to nearby allies. Well, actually nearby any unit, but there's no other enemy Protoss here, so you don't have to worry about that particular interaction. And then also the Patriarch, which does a line trace projectile, and you know, you can imagine it's going to be fairly powerful since it's sort of like a super upgraded version of the Ecclesiast. But we have an engagement that's a little bit favorable for Shambler here, with all of his Bactylisks being able to chew through the front line, really before a lot of them could get in. There's some residual Legionnaires and some flanking maneuvers coming out from Mystery Meat to isolate the rest of this army, and that definitely helps to turn it. You can see the Ecclesiasts constantly replenishing the shields of the Legionnaires themselves, and that is already going to allow this pretty sizable army, a very heavy investment from Shambler. It maybe cleans up half of what Mystery Meat actually has. So he has to immediately think about how to respond to this in short order. And it's just going to be more Hydras for more Bactylisks, and maybe use the fact that he's able to be a little bit more on the defensive side now to punish the lower ranges of this Protoss army. Even the Idol and the Draconin, they don't have as much range as the Bactylisk. But it's going to be a very long time before he can realistically do too much. Meanwhile, you know, this attempt at taking another base, well, that's going to be gone. This scribe over here was dissuaded from taking a fourth base, so instead Mystery Meat takes it down here. Mystery has the macro advantage here. He's got a fourth base online. He's harvesting gas from it. He's going to be training up Tectons. That's the artillery. And unfortunately, Shambler was not expecting the flank. I think that really did him in there. But even if the flank hadn't come in, I do feel like all of the reinforcements on the background there, the ones coming in from the production structures and such, definitely gave Mystery Meat a pretty big leg up. And the fact that, you know, Shambler's down a base doesn't help either. He's got some Sycralisks. They do deal AoE, so that is irrespective of their the length of their projectile that it travels. The Bactylis gains bounces when you have the projectile travel multiple stages, whereas if you attack it in melee, it's not going to bounce nearly as much, or maybe if at all, depending on how close you really are. So the Bactylisk, as a result, is in a really rough spot versus something that can engage so closely against them. The Sycralisk, on the other hand, will always deal consistent AoE. But this army is paltry compared to the force that's amassing over here, and there are more units throughout the rest of the base as well. Whole host of static defense happening over there. Now, okay, if Shambler can take a favorable engagement on the cliff, that might make a bit of a difference. A single Bactylisk is standing tall over here, you know, establishing dominance versus this entire Protoss army and making them fall away, but that's because Mystery Meat knows that there could be something more behind this. He's not going to expect the army to be so small, but he doesn't have a witness nearby to spot for him. However, as soon as you see the Uptekton here, that's got to scare you, because that will deal AoE damage to everything in the area, and there's multiple Uptektons here. I'm not so sure that Shambler can instantaneously respond to this. He's going for a Quasrock pool. If he mutates that into the next evolution, he might be able to access Calculisks, which are a very powerful flying unit, and maybe go for some sort of harassment. But I'm not 100% sure. I mean, this witness is scouting additional units being made. He knows that it's hard committal onto a two-base economy. And Shambler, on the other hand, doesn't know about this base down here. And even if it did know, I'm not sure that he could crack it before this army is in position to remove the rest of the Shambler's forces. So Mystery Meat definitely being favored in this particular move. Pylons are being made just to block expansions. You have to send military units to clear them out. Not a bad shout. Not a bad move. Protathalors are out, but I don't think versus the armor that you're going to be going up against, like the Uptektons have 4 armor. I'm not sure that that's going to really help you out too much. A lot of the Sycralisks are just getting absolutely annihilated. You do get 2 per egg, so they're a little bit more squishy. And some units on the left side, you know, now Mystery Meat being flanked, but even his divided forces are bigger than the army that Shambler is fielding. So this is not a very efficient army here for Mystery Meat. The Skither Cores are doing well to, distract the Uptectons, but they end up getting burst down as well. And yeah, it's just going to be Protathalors trying to withdraw this sort of artillery-type unit while the Legionnaires chase them down. Yeah, okay, you got some Zethar Cores. That's about it, buddy. At this point, I think Shambler knows the writing is on the wall. He just doesn't have the... he doesn't really have what he needs. He doesn't have enough larvae, and he also doesn't really have enough units. He's making more Protathalors, but he has to cancel this base yet again as more units are coming in. And I think one of the underrated aspects of Mystery Meat's play here is the Witnesses never got countered. He's got a second Ancestral Archives. He knew exactly when Shambler was moving out. He knew pretty much the composition of his army. And this is all because Shambler didn't really go for an Ovaleth at any point. So he's realizing the writing on the wall. In fact, him saying that is even going to instigate for Monsieur Mystery Meat to charge in and see what happens. And there it is. GG is called. And our first game ends at around 15 minutes with Shambler taking the L and Mystery Meat establishing dominance and control over the whole map. And that's interesting stuff. So we'll go on to game number 2 and see if Shambler can fight back. It's game number 2, and we have inverse spawns. Mystery Meat in the top left, Shambler in the bottom left. We have the same exact races as well, so it's a similar matchup. It's just mirrored in terms of where they are. So we'll see whether Shambler has what it takes to get back on the board, or will Mystery Meat carve him into a filet mignon? I don't know. I don't know my meat terms. I gotta look up that stuff. I guess it's a mystery as to what the meat actually is. Well, Shambler is famous for typing, so we'll see if Mystery Meat just passively tilts him or something, or if he just absolutely gets himself owned. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but at least for my personality type, if I'm typing or responding to people or whatever, it's not that that throws me off my game, but obviously I'm not focusing on the game. So it's a little bit harder for me to be like, yeah, for sure, this is going to work out just fine. Based on the scout timing, by the way, Mystery Meat might end up having his position intuited just based on how quickly the scribe gets there, and since obviously Shambler scouted the other side. But we'll see. It's going to be a Quasrock pool opener, and that's kind of noteworthy because Shambler doesn't usually do this, but it's going to get scouted immediately. So that might feel a little bit bad for Shambler, but also, he's got to figure out what to do about that. If he had scouted slightly later, or maybe, obviously in the opposite direction, if you see the scout come from the other direction, you kind of know, okay, that's definitely where he's at. So we'll see what Mystery Meat wants to do here. This could be a very fast game. It's going to be a gateway first, but Mystery is not actually building anything back at home. And he sees the Quasrock. He also sees only one gas harvester. That should tell him a little bit, like, maybe this isn't going to be Nathracores then, because they're more gas intensive than they used to be. Off to the top right is Shambler's scout. He's going to be scouting the Mystery Meat scribe last. He's not going for an end scout. I don't see those as often in CMBW, but makes sense. The scribe just continuing the heckle. That's what you want to do. Back at home, there's a Draconin coming. And back at my home, as Shambler gets very, very close to losing his Droleth. Oh, two more hits. One more hit. Oh, and it gets away. Well, this tilt sponsored by the Shambler himself, who is a donator on Coffee. You yourself can get a sponsored shoutout in the middle of your games and castovers if you, for one, donate on Coffee, and for another, actually play the game. So check that out. Kills 1. We love to see that. It's actually going to be some Vorvs out early. I'm not sure that the scribe saw the Zeths out, but that's because I was too busy sponsoring myself. And yeah, at this point he knows, like, okay, well, I'm not even going to bother scouting with my Droleth. I'm just going to send it home. He has to replace the one that he lost, That's really important. Realistically speaking, I mean, I know this is an educational castover and all, but one of the things to point out is we haven't cracked the code. We don't know the meta. There's maps that change. There's the game state itself that changes every now and then. If you want to join us in finding out what the meta actually is, in trying to establish, what kind of things are possible, well, you know where to go, right? rodsclub.com/CMBW. Vorvacores are going to come in and actually surround that Draconin. That's going to be pretty good for the early round here, and that will allow, you can see the ensnare sprite. That's what Vorvacores do now. And that slows attack speed too, so you actually want to put one Vorvacore on each Draconin here. So yeah, both of them are going to be going down. The Automaton Register is here. These scribes did not get pulled as fast as I thought they would. But there are no more Vorvacores out now, so maybe this Draconin can stay alive. Not quite, but I don't think that this set of Zethar Cores is really going to do too much. No scribes went down, but that might empower Shambler to go for some more rounds here. There's an idle, but it's single target. I mean, it's not single target, it does AoE, but I'm not so sure that it's going to be enough versus like another round of mass Vorvs or mass Zeths or whatever we end up seeing out of here. So we actually also see some Nathracors out. There's probably not going to be any static defense. At least that's what Mystery Meat has shown us in the previous game and what Shambler is kind of banking on. But the rescout from the Scribe sees no expansion. I think this should mean to Mystery Meat, I got to start thinking about what to do versus this, because this is definitely going to be more aggressive. In fact, his Scribe might even spot this army. I'm not so sure. I didn't see his... oh, I saw him flash over there. He might have noticed that the minimap, like, it went over the tar. Like, that must have been an air unit or something. You know, there's things that he might have been able to intuit. But there's 2 sets of Naths. That's 4, obviously. When they come in over here to start tickling the workers, the Zethacors can charge in and crack open the ramp. We'll see what he wants to do. Does he want to do one first before the other? Scribes have already been pulled to try to respond to this. Can't exactly wall it off, though, and the Nats are going to come in here as well. Some very fast aggression as probably, again, like I said, this game could end relatively quickly. They don't deal AoE anymore, but they can still... you know, do a decent amount of damage. Vorvs are pretty much all that remains here. They're going to sick themselves onto the Idol, which is now starting to attack multiple units at once. The Nathracors are taking a lot of damage, but the Idol does finally fall, and they can't really break down the Drakodins here, but maybe they can get a couple more worker kills in and put Shambler ahead in terms of workers. Looks like that's exactly what's going to happen as he's up by 4 workers now, 2 of them being Idle. More Nathracors on the way. No expansion yet, and not even killing the scouts. So he's actually going to reveal to his opponent that he's expanding. And he sees the scout there. His last Nathracor can actually be tasked onto that if he wants to. He's adding another Larvosk. And yeah, I think he's put his opponent on the back foot, and we are actually going to see expansions from both players. This could actually be not a slow game. You know, we'll see. You can see the Nathracor is having difficulty chasing moving targets. We're going to try to fix that, of course. I don't know why it's easier for the Gorgakor, honestly, because the Gorgakor and the Nathracor, I'm pretty sure, have the similar ranges, but maybe the Gorgakor does have slightly more. I actually have that file open right now, so while we're keeping that in mind... Ah, yes, okay. Well, the Nathracor has about a little bit more than half the range of the Gorgakor, so I guess that does make sense. A lot of Nathracors are here, though. This model, courtesy of Solstice. But there's also 2 Idols. You really don't want to chance against all of this AoE. They tickle the expansion, confirm that it's going to happen. More Zeths are on the way. More Vorvs are on the way. You know, again, he could engage this force, try to isolate the Idols specifically. Golems do AoE, but they are only attacking ground targets. And there is an Ecclesiast to keep them healthy as well, versus the melee-oriented composition that is being had here by Shambler. Hydroct end for backup. I think I like this move pretty well. There is a Warden now in the back line, but that is also single target. Okay, I like this. He can maybe try to just focus down the Nexus here, but doesn't exactly want to do that. He's stacking up quite a bit. The Idols are going to be focused on, and the Ecclesiast should be focused next because of the shield restore, but in fact, it's just going to be more Idols. There's still 1 left, so he can't really hard commit to everything. And he did trade a lot of units for that. Even losing a Nathracor on the way out. That's the higher-pitched Death Shriek. So, not the best of engagements, but it does give Mystery Meat the idea that maybe he can attack into his opponent. Interesting concept, anyway. A lot of Zethacors did just hatch. He still has AoE from the Idol and AoE from the Golem. But the Nathracors are still here as well, and they are no slouches, per se. They attack air units a bit faster than they attack ground units, which is worth noting. Zethacors are here. A lot of them are not done morphing. The Golem is dealing a lot of AoE as of right now, but it should get focused down. Instead, it's not quite happening. The surround is a little bit botched here. 1 more shot onto the Golem. There it is. Finally going down. The Ecclesiast also had gone down in the meantime, but he doesn't want to continue forcing this issue. He doesn't have any other units in production. He really needed to either like do as much damage as possible with those workers pulled, or he needed to, you know, maybe like kill the Idol, kill a couple of the Drakodins or something with that force. But as of right now, he's the one in trouble. It's going to be a while before his Hydras are hatching, and 3 of them immediately are going to be out on the natural split from the other units. As he gets owned by pathing and typing, he will start to lose those Hydras. 3 of them have fallen. No Protoss casualties to speak of since the last Golem and the Idol, or the Ecclesiast, rather. And now, Mystery Meat is in the lead of workers, obviously killing a lot there. It's not necessarily over. I mean, he does have Hydras to go with his Quasrock units, but does he want to actually combine them? He first needs to replenish his worker counts, which he can do a lot easier than the other races, admittedly. But Mystery Meat in the back home is floating a lot of money. He's going to start adding pylons to build more stuff. We'll see what he wants to go for. The Hydras are going to go across the map, but they're going to be met with a brick wall of Drakodins and Idols. He's not really going to be able to do too much here. And maybe if he could find a spot to elevator or something, that would be something. But he doesn't have an Ovalith, and it's not really a good spot on this map to do that in anyway. Maybe like over here, but even then, you know, we can see a lot with Mystery Meat's vision preview. Vorva cores. Well, a single one anyway. A couple Zeths are coming out. Okay. So there is going to be Vorv Hydra. That could work. I mean, the Hydras can try to focus down the idols, and if they're slowed, I mean, obviously that increases the number of hits that the Hydras can make. But yeah, when you see the Cenotaphs up here, it's going to be a tall order for Shambler to crack this one. He went for a very aggressive opener, but I think he just botched a couple of the engagements and didn't bring workers fast enough to deal with the idol and the golem. He also was starting to morph Vorvacores as those units came in. I think if he had canceled that and just went straight Zeth for that fight, he also would have had a better time. Now he's going to get forced back. Might lose a couple of Hydras for this effort. He does do a lot of damage to that golem. So at the very least, it won't be as effective as a frontliner. That's the only front line, actually, that Mystery Meat has right now, but obviously there are Legionnaires coming now. And a third base coming out for Mystery Meat. He's totally fine going into that. Third base for Shambler. Okay. Well, we're seeing some play back and forth. Hydra's Vorv. Okay, this army combined with the Hydras over here could be somewhat significant, but a Witness is going to spot this out. Does Shambler notice? His camera is not on his own army. Maybe he sees it now, but he's going to come up over here, and yeah, this is instantaneously going to be Mystery Meat falling back a little bit with his army. Shambler does not suspect that another base is going to be taken here. And this is such a good position here for Mystery Meat, but admittedly his Legionnaires are taking a little bit of time to get to the front line, and at this point the Hydras have chewed through a bunch of the idols on the front. No more Golem either. So this is just Legionnaire, but it's still going to force him back because all the Zeths and Vorvs have been taken care of. Once you see a Legionnaire, you definitely want to grab some Izira cores, but does he have the minerals for it? He is going into Zeths instead, so he's still going to be conceding the initial fights to those mass Legionnaires, and more idols and, you know, Dracodons can be made in the meantime. All of this, by the way, all of the idols and golems, all of the Dracodons and Ecclesiasts, they've all been made just from the single gateway and a single automaton register. Something to think about. Something to think about. Like, you can obviously replenish your stocks a lot faster than the other races can as Zerg because of the fact that they have limited production. So even asymmetric trades in terms of military, like you lost more Zethra than you killed idols or whatever, like if you're killing idols and Dracodons, it takes longer for them to actually replenish their stocks. But despite this, you know, he's got a fairly sizable army over here. He's making some Vorvs. The Witness is spotting him out. I still don't know if it's going to be enough. Like, theoretically, if you have enough Vorvs, obviously when they die, they regress into Zethra They deal more damage then, assuming they survive further back. So, yeah, depending on the engagement type, you know, he can certainly do something here. I do like this, though. I like that we're seeing larger armies in general, and specifically larger ground armies. Instant gas saturation. Mystery Meat looking to ascend the tech tree as he continues to produce idols, Ecclesiasts, Dracodons, and Legionnaires. Mostly, he stopped producing Dracodons for a little bit now. He's only got the one gateway anyway, so. All right, trying to storm the gates, surround the area over here. This is maybe caught out a little bit, but the pathing is not super great. The attempt at surrounding, the Legionnaires are instead sort of like focusing the Zeths and Vorvs into a bit of a concave. Both players are losing their front line, but here come reinforcement Legionnaires. And yeah, I just don't think that there were enough. I like this position for Shambler, but he needed way more units to really make it work. Not great focus coming out from the rest of the units, so at least one Legionnaire will stay alive, and as well as one Ecclesiast. And yeah, the Witness is spotting this out here as well. Worker count slightly favoring the Protoss. Iris coming, but no military back at home. If this army attacks, it's going to be game over, boys. The Zorka Shroud was made in the meantime. Actually, if we could see some Lakizilisks out, we could maybe see a defensive hold. Instead, it's going to be Gorgs. I'm not so sure that I like that versus all of the Dracodons and Idols. And of course, with the Witnesses out, the Lakizilisks have less efficacy, but yeah, I think his timing was just a little bit off with the tech, right? He's going to lose all of his workers. He's going to have to withdraw them back. He was already down workers and on an even base situation. Look at all of that AoE, killing all those Droliths. Witness spotting up here as well. Mystery Meat knows he's got nothing to be afraid of. No posturing can really be done. That Gorgor finishes, gets a couple hits off, and then dies. That's sort of what I was expecting. We got more Gorgors out. Last-ditch Quasilisk effort. Look at this, trying to catch him on the ramp. Doing a decent amount of AoE, but it's not going to be enough. And yeah, there you go. Mystery Meat will take it without a GG even. 2-0 in this particular round. So Shambler taking some time to adjust to some of the latest Zerg changes, try out some interesting strategies, and get a little bit more familiar with Mystery Meat's Protoss playstyle, I suppose. So we love to see that. I'm sure we'll be seeing more from these two people in the future, but I hope you learned a thing or two about Cosmonarchy Brood War, and you're excited for more, because we got more every day. Castovers every day, boy. Let's go.